Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. That music means it's time for the Hillsdale Dialogue. Once a week, we go higher, we go immediate with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. Next week, we're going back to Plato like we were last week. This week, though, I'm back from the Caribbean filling in for Dennis, and I thought I'd ask Dr. Arnn how he thought President-elect Trump was doing in the early stages of the transition. We're far away from hearings yet. Dr. Arnn, good morning to you. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving.
Good. How are you?
Belated. I am great. I want to ask you, by the way, thank you. I have received an invitation and am looking forward to my next cruise will be with the Hillsdale gang, which means you got to put up with me for a couple of weeks.
Oh, man. That's amazing. So people should come just to see if I throw Hugh overboard.
People do vanish from cruise ships occasionally. But how often do you talk on those?
There's a cycle, one way and another 5 times. I talk to first-timers because they're a little green and not used to being hazed. And then we have reception for bunch. And then I think everybody gives 3 general lectures, and I give 3, and you'll give 3. For those of you who have trepidation about listening to Hugh Hewitt on a cruise ship, they don't last too long.
Well, I'm going to talk about you on number 1. So that's the most important thing that people understand. That finally an objective view of Dr. Arnn will be given. Dr. Arnn, but this is do you take over the whole boat?
Most of it, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how many will be there, but sometimes it's 500.
Well, it's my favorite cruise line. It's Regent. It's Regent. So I think people ought to go over to hillsdale.edu and find the Regent cruise and sign up because they'll get a balanced view of Dr. Arnn on this cruise, even if you've gone on a Hillsdale cruise before. And I'm not doing them anymore. You're the only one. When your guys showed up, I had to go to Salem and say, hey, I got to take 2 weeks off in May and June. And they said, good, go for it. It's Hillsdale. So I'm very, very happy. Now, Dr. Arnn, let's get to the transition. I'm very pleased. I wasn't excited about Mr. Gates. I'm very excited about Mr. Bondi. I think Pete Hegseth is going to have a rough ride, but we'll get through. Generally speaking, not specifically speaking, what do you think?
Well, the breathtaking thing is the DOGE and the plans that they have thought some things through. There's those 2 guys you got on screen. I call them the boy wonders, except not boys anymore.
Exactly.
And then there's a guy named Russ Vought, and he's going to be the head of the Office of Management and Budget, and he's a very good guy. And Russ they're going to make recommendations to Russ, and they have thought the thing through in an amazing way. So it turns out that the Supreme Court has ruled that agencies can't make major rules in new areas unless the Congress explicitly permits them. That's step 1. Older practice says, although the president cannot fire an individual in the administration, he can do reductions in force. Put those 2 things together. Is there anything going on in the bureaucracy that's not been authorized by Congress? And that means many things, very many things have been. I think, I'm not sure about this, I know they worked on it. For example, they have listed carbon dioxide as a pollutant, and most of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide.
Correct.
And so they're regulating that, and they don't have authority from Congress for that. So now, QED, or the ergo, wasn't that cool? They can identify a thing being done not authorized and eliminate the function and eliminate the people who work in the function. And that means there'll be a bunch of people going into the private sector. And they're even saying, in this Wall Street Journal article last week, which is very worth reading for people, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy wrote it together. They're going to head this thing together. They even say that they're going to have plans to help with the transition to the private sector.
Oh, my.
And that's, isn't that amazing? So there, and, I believe, if it pleases the Lord to save our country, he looks to me to be going about it in a deliberate way. And that means the 2020 election, which was questionable, because for the simple reason that they changed the election practices by, the executive branch alone in many states, including mine. And so how can you depend on it, right? But, and Joe Biden got, if you adjust for the increase in the size of the voter rolls, which is between 2008 when Obama was elected in a landslide, that's today a landslide is 53%, to today, there's 30 million more voters. Adjust Obama's vote up for that. Biden got more votes than Obama.
Correct.
Adjusted. And he campaigned from his basement. And, I realize that he's often Biden for Demosthenes, but did he really run that great a campaign? So the point is that's questionable. But then these 4 years, a lot of people have been thinking. And a lot of people, we've been talking about the administrative state for, Hugh, it's got to be 40 years.
Yep.
And this is the first attempt fundamentally to reform it. We have to have a civil service. It should be obedient to the political will expressed through representatives of the people. And if it's not that, then it's not accountable government.
Last week
I
did two things last week, Dr. Arnn. I wrote a column for Fox News on the budget reconciliation process. And my assumption was that the DOGE would not be ready with its recommendations until next year. You get two big swings where the filibuster rule does not apply in the budget. If you pass a budget and the House and the Senate agree, then the trailing legislation to implement it requires only 51 votes to pass, or a majority of whomever is present. So the Republicans can move out fast and furious, and Senator Collins was the second thing I did last week, and she's the incoming chair of Senate Appropriations, and she wants regular order on appropriations, but she also wants reconciliation to move fast. I did not think DOGE could combine and shrink agencies that quickly, because it's a complicated business, but maybe they can get a few swings in. I want to know if you agree with me. I am not going to be persuaded they're serious if at the end of the first reconciliation there is still a dime left in the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a dime left in the National Endowment for the Arts, or a dime left in the National Endowment for the Humanities. That's the easiest stuff to cut. And if you cannot cut the easiest stuff, you'll never cut the hard stuff. Do you agree with my assessment?
Well, that's right. And I want to emphasize a point, because this is the part that's breathtaking to me. They think that they are not only justified, they think they are compelled by the Constitution and the relation among the branches to eliminate large things in the executive branch.
Bravo.
And then they say, and what? Those are things that, you're a lawyer, and so you think the Supreme Court is more important than I do. But the fact that this approach is blessed by several court cases, the one about the Chevron doctrine and the one about Canton.
Loper Bright in West Virginia versus EPA.
Not explicitly.
Yeah, Loper Bright in West Virginia.
And then there's some older ones that the president can do reductions in force. So the point is, large things are probably going to start happening by the middle of next year. And that is remarkable to me.
If you listen to yesterday's conversation with Senator Cornyn and Senator Tillis, you know that is true. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Arnn will be right back.
It's no secret that Americans are more divided than ever. And it's not just over what policies will improve our great country. No, it's over whether America is great at all, whether America deserves our love. That's why Imprimis is so important. Imprimis looks at the issues of the day from a constitutional perspective, reminding citizens always of our great heritage of liberty. For more than 50 years, Imprimis has featured speeches from the smartest conservative thinkers and writers at Hillsdale events. These days, Hillsdale publishes people like Molly Hemingway, Andy Puzder, Harmeet Dillon, and Chris Rufo. Over 6.4 million American households and businesses receive Imprimis absolutely free. And I urge you to sign up for it today at no charge. To get your free lifetime subscription, go to hillsdale.edu/lifetime right now. Or text the word Imprimis to 71844 and we'll send you a link to sign up for your free lifetime subscription. That's IMPRIMIS to 71844.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, is my guest. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our prior dialogues at Hugh, Hillsdale.com, HughforHillsdale.com. Dr. Arnn, you were talking about targets of the budget cutters?
They are saying that they're going to get rid of, not just the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And I think that takes Congress. The Department of Education probably does.
Yes.
And they've put, as a friend of mine puts it, the Secretary of Education has been in the ring with Stone Cold Austin.
So she is ready for the NEA. Randy Weingarten isn't that big. Yeah.
I mean, wow. So, I have communication with the transition team myself about what to do and stuff like that. And at one point they said, she'd like to meet you. I said, yeah, okay, I'm taking some help.
Take the biggest tackles from the Hillsdale Chargers with you because she's tough. Let me ask you about the Department of Education and about the proposal that is out there that we're going to tax endowments of schools. I don't like taxing endowments of schools, but I do believe in cutting off all federal grants to schools with endowments of more than $1 billion. That would include my alma mater with $50 billion. Why in the world are we giving any money to Harvard, Dr. Arnn?
Well, I have two complaints about that. One is particular and one is general. There is an endowment tax now, and the only college that doesn't take any money from the government that pays it would be Hillsdale College.
Correct.
And so that's annoying to me. And if they exempt us, then they should just exempt any college that doesn't take any money from the government. The better course is to reduce the funding.
Yes.
Because if you give you tax people and give an enormous amount of money to private institutions, and then you tax their what source they have of independence, then you're actually setting up a system in which the only way to go is the government, and there's too much of that anyway, right? And so we should encourage independence in colleges. They should live of their own. That will make them, to the maximum extent possible. And I'm not against subsidizing education. Lord help us. Do we not subsidize the heck out of the kids who come to Hillsdale College? And they need it, right? But to the extent that you can diversify that and root that in the private sector, then you will break up this cartel of these commonly funded, the government gives a large percentage of the money that goes into college through student aid mostly, but not exclusively. Direct to the colleges is a lot too. And so they should reduce that, right?
Well, I want your help. The objection I have heard is, Oh, but the universities do a lot of research and development that we need them to do. That's why we give money to Stanford, because they're in the Silicon Valley and they invent artificial intelligence. And that's why we give it to MIT and UCI and Harvard, because they're doing medical breakthroughs. My response is, don't stop doing research. Just don't do it with universities. Do it with private sector companies and own what comes out. Do not give it to universities. What do you think of my position?
Well, sure, that's an improvement. The point is, what is a discovery? It is an act of a human soul, whether it's a scientific discovery or figuring out the dogs are not cats. And that's a spark in us, and everybody's got it. And so you want a system in which everybody who has a spark can pursue it.
Not have it crushed. That's the key. Stand by, Dr. Arnn. We're going to come back to that. To have a spark, especially a spark of curiosity, and not have it crushed is a great blessing. You'll have that flame fanned and sparked into being at Hillsdale. Go get the application, hillsdale.edu, or watch one of their online courses. Hillsdale.edu for all things Hillsdale. All of the prior Hillsdale Dialogues, hundreds of them at hugh4hillsdale.com. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. That music means the Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Last radio hour of the week, where I talk with either Dr. Larry Arnn or another member of the Hillsdale faculty or staff. Today it is Dr. Arnn, because we're looking at the budget, we're looking at reconciliation, and we're looking at cuts. Dr. Arnn is, like I am, constantly talking with people in the Beltway about what is on the table and about what we hear. Dr. Arnn.
I was told there's some big number, and I think it might be 60% of the science funding in the world. It's divided into health and non-health science funding. That 60% of it comes from two agencies of the American government. And by the way, my friend and great man, Jay Bhattacharya, the rumor is that he's going to be in charge of the National Institute for Health. And
you're the first person that told me about him, and you were right. He's smart.
Oh, man. He's a wonderful man. He's really fun. And he's a brilliant guy. He's got a PhD in economics and a medical degree, and he teaches at Stanford Medical School and the Hoover Institution. And he stood up about this COVID stuff, which, our approach to COVID violated the basic procedures of pandemic that have been in place for 40 years. And they changed them, by the way, a few months before COVID. That's a little suspicious, because he's the one who pointed out that if it's a respiratory virus, you won't stop it by quarantine because it spreads too fast. And so you've got to protect the vulnerable. And, it's a new virus, apparently man-made, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. No way around that. But you'll hurt a lot more if you keep people who are not vulnerable to it locked up.
E.g. children.
And if they can't
children,
they'll die.
Yeah, E.g. children.
Mm-hmm. Well, 2 million school children in Sweden went to school unprotected throughout the pandemic, and not one of them died. But that was so. When the pandemic hit, I tried to figure out how. I'm employed to hold college, and I was thinking, okay, step one, can you hold college? And I didn't wait for the government to tell me if I could. I thought of that as a separate problem. I thought, if there's a legal order, and legal is a big thing. Do they have the actual power to give the order? If there's a legal order and it's legitimate, one must obey it. But absent that, I should be thinking, what do I do? Right? We're supposed to have college. And So I got in touch with Jay Bhattacharya. And the first time I talked to him, he said, and see, in a college, when you think about, it's a particular kind of thing, and it's, full of young people, and they live in dormitories. And so the idea of isolating them is absurd. And it took me 3 or 4 days to think that through. And after 3 or 4 days, I knew what to do about the old people like me, which is, I said, if you're afraid of this, stay home, and we'll pay you, and we'll figure out a way for you to do some work from home. And I didn't want to, because I, in general, don't like to be in the position of deciding fatal things for other people.
Yeah, good caution.
Potentially fatal things. And, they know as much as I do. And giving orders is, I have the authority to give orders. I try to give the fewest possible with the most flexibility because people got to do their jobs. It's the whole way the American government is supposed to work, by the way. It's a bottom-up country. So I just said that, if you're afraid of this, stay home. Some did, not very many, maybe out of a community of, round numbers, 2,500 people, students, faculty, and staff. I think maybe 8 stayed home. And
probably with good reason, probably an underlying condition that was specifically threatened by the virus. And there was good epidemiology.
Yeah, and I decided I didn't need to know that.
Yep.
Am I going to get in a conversation, where I'm becoming an expert and they say, well, I've got this and I've got that. And I say, well, that's not dangerous enough. Come to work or
good for you.
Stay home. Right.
Prudent. Very prudent.
And then the trouble was I could give that directive to the students too. But if I welcome them back and they start dying on me, as I said, it will be very inconvenient to me.
I want to point out what Hillsdale actually did was close early in the fall of 2020 and reopen in the fall of 2020. They did the prudent thing. They neither overreacted nor underreacted.
Well, the timeline's a little different. The thing hit during spring break of 2020 spring, and they were all gone, and they couldn't get back. So the decision was really removed from me. Right, the travel was restricted, and the kids are spread all over the country and around the world. So we were, the students basically couldn't get back. Some of them were in town and they stayed around, but the rest of us live here. And I just said to them, after a week of thinking about it. Well, during that week, I found Jay Bhattacharya and Scott Atlas and Martin Kulldorff and a man named Daniel Halperin from North Carolina. And I said, is it going to kill the kids? Because they live in dormitories, right? And if they all come back and get in the dormitories, I did a video and said, we're determined to have college full in the fall, which we did. And in the meantime, work hard, sign the honor code, live intensely, away. It's a pain. And then I said, we're going to come back, if I can do it, any way at all. And I need to know if you're going to die. And I did say on this video I did to the campus community, I said, I don't want a lot of these kids coming back and dying because I said it'll be very inconvenient to me. Because we don't like to flatter them or coddle them.
I hope. And, I hope they call you as a witness. I think that was watched by. I want them to call you as a witness for Jay Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
When they have a hearing.
Well, it was.
Call you.
And here's what he said. That video, by the way, was watched by 2 million people.
Wow.
Not the 2,500 that I sent it to.
Wow.
And then. He said, so here's what he said to me the first conversation. I said, I think I figured out what I have to know. Is he going to kill the kids? He said, excellent. That's exactly what you need to know. And I said, is it? He said, tell you in 3 weeks. And what they did was they did serology studies, they're called. They just found as many people as they could and took blood from them and said, have you got this virus? And they found out that it was very widespread already, that the attempt to contain it was ridiculous. And then they watched for a month, 6 weeks maybe. They watched to see who's getting hurt by it. And he told me in that first conversation, this general kind of virus is generally not dangerous to young, healthy people. But we can tell, right? So I had time, and he came back and said, unlikely to hurt the students, right? And I think, the NCAA, which is, I don't talk quite as bad about it anymore as I used to, because I've met a very senior man there named Kevin Lennon, who's a very good man. First time I've ever known anybody important in the NCAA. And I like him a lot, and I know that they're trying to do well. But they have too many rules, and that's what I talked to him about.
They're ridiculous. It's ridiculous. NCAA is ridiculous.
So I had to test the athletes, I think weekly. And that meant that when a basketball player or a football player got it, within a week, all of them had it. And, that means that nearly everybody, every kid at Hillsdale College had COVID, right? And I, was talking to these experts a lot. And, the thing to watch for is difficulty breathing. We had maybe half a dozen students go to the hospital because they were getting choked up. None of them was admitted to the hospital. We didn't have anybody. I went out and bought 4 ventilators. I didn't know how to use them. I just said to the vice president for administration, the great Rich Payway, I said, go buy some ventilators. And he did. And, we have a health center and we have people who would know how to use them. And the big rage in the beginning was put them on ventilators. That proved not to be the right thing in most cases. And we didn't have anybody do that because, we would have, if we could, I was afraid that somebody would get frozen up and we couldn't get them to the hospital, which is less than a mile away. So we had ventilators, right?
Pause right there, Dr. Arnn. The good news is Hillsdale did it the right way, and they reopened quickly, and Jay Bhattacharya is going to be great at NIH. We'll talk more about that in the weeks ahead. Coming back with the conclusion of this week's Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our dialogues, by the way, Hugh for Hillsdale.com.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding. And we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Every week I am seduced by this. I still don't know what it is. I'm seduced by this music. The music that we always use for the Hillsdale Dialogue is always the same 4 pieces. And I know 3 out of 4, but I don't know this one. And I will learn it. I'll ask Adam to tell me what it is, but it always kind of mellows me out. I like cello. What I want to stress to you about Hillsdale is that if you're new to the program, you've just discovered me, and we add affiliates every week. Dr. Arnn and I have been doing this for a decade. So that means there are hundreds of Hillsdale Dialogues. And they begin with the book of Job, which is the oldest book in the Bible. And then we go to Homer. And we have been moving forward and backwards since then. This is one of the weeks where we're talking about that which is happening immediately. But I do want to tell all of you, if you want to go, we are in the middle of a big series on Plato's Republic with Dr. Arnn and Dr. Daniel O'Toole. All of those are collected at hughforhillsdale.com, or you can go to iTunes, type in Hugh Hewitt and Hillsdale, and they'll take you there, and they're in reverse order, but they're also in reverse order at hillsdale.edu. And at hillsdale.edu, you'll also get every single one of the Hillsdale free courses, and sign up for Imprimis, which is absolutely free. And don't forget your end-of-year giving, hillsdale.edu. Before we run out of time, here's my question. Do you think, whether it's NIH or anywhere, that Trump is going to take too much talent out of the private sector? Because Jay Bhattacharya matters a lot. And once he goes in the government, in whatever capacity, his time will be constrained. Is it a good thing for Trump to take the talent out of the private sector?
Well, there's a lot of talent, right? And if you give people more scope, you will find more. One of the complaints, I guess I'm not speaking for Jay, but one of the complaints that intelligent people make is that the peer review system,
correct,
is heavily under the influence of these powerful bodies that give away all the money. And you got to remember, Francis Collins, who on many grounds is a good man and was head of the NIH.
But he misled me on the air. He and Anthony Fauci misled me on the air.
Yeah, well, he didn't. This is not a good moment for him, right? And he since apologized some. Fauci has not.
He has not.
But he sent an email that said, shut those guys down. Fringe scientist, he called them. Now, Francis Collins has given a speech on this campus, and he wrote a good book about genetics and God, and he quotes C.S. Lewis a lot in it. He's a good guy, you know.
A wonderful man, but we all make mistakes.
Them fringe scientist, and he is a chemist, and Jay Bhattacharya is one of the leading experts, and Scott Atlas and Martin Kulldorff, Harvard faculty, medical school faculty member. They are experts on this thing, right?
They're epidemiologists. Yes, that's what they do.
Some tens of thousands of medical doctors and scientists signed their great Barrington Declaration, and they shut it down. It was canceled from social media, and their web pages disappeared. And that was the government doing that, right? And Francis Collins was complicit.
And let's put those two pictures bad up, Harley. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, if they can do one thing, which is to limit the authority of the federal government over the freedom of people like Dr. Arnn to run the institutions in which they are entrusted with responsibility, I will be happy. We have 2 minutes, Dr. Arnn. Are you optimistic they can do that?
What I have thought until I read that article in the Wall Street Journal was it's going to be a wonderful argument, which will be good, right? We should argue about things. Now I think maybe they can do it. And I think they've got the team in place, and they've figured a lot of things out. And bless them, you know.
Have they brought in any of your Hillsdale-trained lawyers who then went on to Harvard Law School and the Supreme Court? Have they got any of those people?
Early days. I've sent some recommendations of people. We put a list together. Jay Bhattacharya was at the top of it. And, you know, I think they'll hire a lot of good people.
I hope they will just say, if you graduated from Hillsdale, we're not going to investigate you. You've been investigated already by your peers, and you stated that. I hope they just hire the heck out of your alums and turn it into a conveyor belt.
There were a bunch in 2016, and remember, you know, I've never had a job working for the government in my life, and I don't want one. But they and you know we have career services, and we get them jobs, help them get jobs all over the place. But there were 15 or so working in the White House last time.
Double it, and Donald. Double it, Mr. President-elect. Triple it, and do it in every agency. That's it for all of our time on this. I will be back next week with Dr. O'Toole and Dr. Arnn. We're going back to this, the Republic of Plato. I don't know if we're going to finish it in 2024, but we will by the end of 2025. So do not miss next week's Hillsdale Dialogue. Remember, all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, all of the previous dialogues on Plato and on current events collected at hugh4hillsdale.com.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.